Well, the end of one thing is the start of another. Today we've seen the end of the 2025 Formula One World Championship. And to avenge it, here comes Season 6 of Vortex F1 Racing League. It's Sunday today, which means equal performance cars and some great fucking racing. So, our 20 drivers, we will have 20 when we get the final driver in during qualifying. We have 19 currently on the grid for today, which is nearly a full grid. We have Ben Harvey, Rory, Daz, Jack, Noble 4, Onions, Magnus, Ken Cheese, Who Am I, Suzuki, Liminator, Obese, Tommy, Bunny, Forfeit, Daryl, Josh, F1 Mad, and Dan Richards. We are in Barcelona, the circuit to Barcelona, Catalonia, and it's qualifying right now. Just seen probably one of the most unsafe releases already, which is a good thing the game handles it, because Dan Richards going on to track is far from the first one out though, so we'll see who on earth it is. I believe it's Onions Please. There we go. Onions Please is the first one out. We'll follow him through the outlap just to get a nice idea of what's going on this circuit today. High speed, but also some technical moments. A great one to start the season off on. Now Sector 3. The laps are quite short around here, usually around 1 minute 11, 1 minute 12. So drivers are given lots of time to get their 3 qualifying laps in, if they decide to use all 3 fresh, soft tyres. And Onions, using his very first one, out of the final turn now. Washing wide on the exit curb, but not too wide. And down the main straight. Burning battery already. You can see that yellow line on the telemetry in the bottom. Simply going down all the way to 66% before braking for turn 1. Harsh with curb taken on both the inside of turn 1 and 2. Sticking to the right hand of turn 3 before washing out wide for the entry into turn 4. Now you want to be wide, cut back to the inside curb, just clip it, don't go too wide onto the grass, get on throttle as soon as possible. It's a purple sector 1 for the McLaren. Tap on the brakes for turn 5. And again back on throttle as soon as possible, burning the ERS once again, the battery, the hybrid system in these V8 cars. V6 cars, sorry, wish it was V8. There's a little bit of an Aston Martin in the way on that part of the track. Down to 25% battery. The traffic well navigated by Onions for now. The first sector is beaten though. No longer a purple sector 1 for him. Purple sector 2 though. And now yellow sector 2, meaning the sector 2 has been beaten as well. Now through the final corner. New Holland, turn 14. And sticking to the left for the first lap time of the session. It's a 1:11.851. A great lap time from Onions Please. And a 13.0 from Josh Owen. Suzuki does an 11.8 in the Williams. And Liminator, 13.3 in the Haas. So Suzuki beats Onions' time by about half a tenth to take our provisional pole. Dan Richards in the Sauber goes 12.7. And Tommy, 13.5. Daz, 17.1. Rory, the Ferrari, hitting an 11.9 to go P3. So 3 times sub 12 right now. And what about the rest of them? Jack in the Red Bull. Noble 4 retiring. For a season opening qualifying, he's giving himself a bit of a challenge. As Williams gets out of Jack's way as he finishes his lap. But the pace seems difficult. There's a McLaren in the middle of the final straight, as it's a 1:14.9 for Jack. Obese does a 16.6. And Bunny, the only one so far not to have done a lap, and who's currently on one, and goes wide turn 9. Very easy to do, and it's invalid. You go off the track in qualifying, the lap will not count. And that's what's happened here. So what about Who Am I? We saw some great fighting from him last season, but it's a blank slate now. And he's doing the very similar line to the right of turn 3. And it's 0.2 slower than Suzuki in sector 1. Dips his front right tyre into the grass in turn 4. Nice rotation turn 5 though, not struggling there. It can be a difficult downhill braking zone for some. Daz does an 11.825 to go P2. Splitting Suzuki and Onions. So who am I through sector 2? No purple sectors so far, but it seemed nice and comfortable. Of course, we're at the start of the qualifying, which means we might see some banker laps, some more safe laps, just to make sure there's a time on the board. And across the line for who am I, it's P5. Now, Bunny. Having struggled before. Coming into the pits with not enough fuel. What about forfeit? The other Mercedes. Through the final sector now. It's flat out through turns 13 and 14. If you can manage the line well enough. You can see the throttle held to the floor as P6 goes forfeit. No one quite troubling Suzuki. Although the front 3 are all within half a tenth. We're seeing outlaps come out now. As the laps are so fast. Magnus on his first lap of the session. Very wide on the exit curbs of turn 5. Now into turn 7. Taking some of the curb, but not the entire curb stone, to avoid unsettling the car. 44% battery. Burning it down this back straight where you are given DRS. It closes though before turn 10. A difficult traction zone indeed. Now 11 and 12. It doesn't get any easier here either. As you can see, the throttle slowly steps up. You never know when you're at the limit. You have to trust it. Now turn 14. Bit of a snap. But overall well managed for Magnus. And it's P6 for him. Relegating forfeit to P7. Eliminator, one of our next drivers on a lap. It's a personal best sector 1 for him. 0.2 slower than Suzuki. But given that he's gone 13.3 first lap, this seems a very good improvement. Through the technical middle sector. Avoiding the car sliding around. Flat out through turn 9. And burning battery to 20% before the start of sector 3, all the way to the right of the track to cut back into the left. A personal best sector 2, 0.7 slower than Suzuki overall. If he lost no more time to Suzuki, he'd be P7 at this rate. But of course, sector 3 can always change a lap. And across the line he comes to make a significant improvement. It's P11 for the Haas driver now, as we have many more laps to look at. Our front runner, most notably Suzuki. The Williams driver currently holds our provisional pole. Around halfway into the session, it was a personal best sector 1, but a yellow sector 2. Does it get better in sector 3? The whole grid watching as the standard improves by 0.3. As Rory goes to P2. Beating Daz, and Onions beats that further, improves to an 11.65, but it's not enough still for that front row. Front row, he's there. At least provisionally. Apparently there's rain in the race. But of course now is not the time to be concerned about that. F1 Mad finishes his, I presume, warm-up lap because it took him 1 minute and 40 seconds. And starts a new one now. The timer begins ticking again. It doesn't matter what your laps before were. It's all about now. Braking for turn 1. Bit of a tire squeak, but generally good rotation. A personal best sector 1.333, slower than Suzuki. But so far, Suzuki's remained unbeaten. Invalid though, on the entry or exit of turn 5, I couldn't quite tell. The lap time goes red, we slide off in turn 6. An F1 man's lap has to be disregarded. We're skipping around, there's so many drivers today. What about who am I? It's a personal best sector 1. A 12.1, currently the best time for him on the board, putting in P5 provisionally. Daz Dyer is also on a lap ahead of him. You have to wonder, who am I? Has cars ahead of him. Is he going to be getting some of that dirty air? As the Mercedes goes off, we get a snap on the exit. I was talking about difficult traction zones. That's what happens if you just get too eager on the throttle. And on the exit, Daz comes across the line. It's P2 for him. 0.620. What about who am I? Can he beat his time? He does, but by only 0.2. And that doesn't quite change where he lands. So Daz now P2. Suzuki, less than half a tenth ahead of him. But Daz not quite able to get ahead. We'll look again. We'll see improvement across the grid. What about forfeit? I believe forfeit was that Mercedes who had to leave the track in Sector 3 to get out of Who Am I's way. But it's all forgotten now, as through turn 5 he has his own lap times to set. Gentle on the inside curb of turn 6. Tiny bit of a lift to around 95% throttle, just to make sure that corner was safe. You can see on the telemetry. Keep an eye on the driving technique, it's very interesting. It's very, very quick back on the throttle is forfeit. Going a little bit deep in turn 12. You can hug that right side curb a bit more than that. But generally okay. Is there improvement for him? Current best lap time at 12.652. He beats it to do a 12.5. And it improves him by 3 positions, I believe, all the way up to P9. As Magnus does a 12.3 to beat Bunny, putting the two Mercedes in P8 and 9 together. Lots of drivers now in the pits, waiting for the final shootout, which is the end of the session. Everybody gets one more lap on their new tyres, and that will determine your starting position. It's all about setting a good precedent in this season, and Suzuki, always the first one to do it. The timer goes with 4.5 minutes remaining. He's out nice and early and started his final lap. Very quickly off the brakes for turn 1. Loads of curb in turn 2, but it's a very beautiful line through turn 3. Very smooth on the steering. 295 kilometers an hour before braking for turn 4. Dips the tyre into the grass. Not quite where the tyre is meant to be. It's meant for grip on tarmac. But sometimes you can deal with it. It's a yellow sector 1 as a result. Some struggles here for Suzuki. If he wants to protect his current provisional pole from being beaten by Daz, he'll have to improve. Because he is at risk. And it's improvement by 1,000th in the second sector. A purple sector 2. And which means the entire improvement of this lap time almost is set to this exact turn. Turn 12, which gives you the speed for turn 13, now 14. And into the pits he comes. He's made a mistake, and it's not good enough. Suzuki stuck on his 11.5. And we'll see now the rest of the grid catching up on their outlaps. Suzuki's given himself a clear shot, and it didn't quite go to plan. Lots of tyre warming going on. There's Josh Owen on at 12.9 right now. One of the first to cross the line for the final lap. Very, very tight on the curb in turn 1. Lots of lag. Internet issues. Not quite an issue in real life racing, but definitely might be for Josh Owen as his car's jumping around. Jack in the Red Bull in P15. We'll keep an eye on his improvement. Lots of grass in the front right tyre for everybody here. Rory in turn 4 also making the same mistake as we saw from Suzuki. Through turn 5 now, you have to wonder, dirty air from the Red Bull ahead maybe? Not quite the best position to be starting a lap in, especially gaining on him, and it's a slide in turn 7. The Ferrari twitching after going on too much curb. Who am I now? Through sector 1. Doing another warm-up, it seems. Doing a double warm-up lap. Fueled himself for 2 and is going for both. Dan Richards just beginning his lap 2. As Jack doesn't quite improve on his time, stays P15. It's Dan Richards. Currently P6, but it's so very close. Up at the front. Is there any more in it for the Sauber? Not quite, no. He stays P6 with a 12.1. But now, Onions has got going, the McLaren. One of the closest to Suzuki. Daz now only just on an outlap. And Onions is improving, I believe. Indeed, it's a purple sector 1 for Onions. A yellow sector 2, though, it's lost. Just then, Daz begins his lap. We'll check on him in just a minute. As Onions through sector 3 has a chance to recover what he just lost. If he can gain by just half a tenth, he'll gain P2 and get a front row start, but it's off the exit in the final turn, and the lap's invalid. It doesn't quite make a difference. What about Daz now? The one who's been closest to Suzuki all session. Yellow sector 1. That's now through turn 12. It's purple sector 2. And he's given an opportunity. Suzuki has retired. Who am I? Takes his P2 from him. And if he wants to defend it, he has to go faster now. It's P1 for Daz. It's pole position. At least provisionally. Can Onions beat it? Onions, the only one, never mind, having invalidated. It's not happening. So Daz takes the first pole position of the season in Spain. And so the qualifying in Spain has gone completely different to how anybody would have expected. We saw season 5. Some prominent figures popping up, but no. They've been relegated. P2, P3 goes Suzuki and Who Am I, our front runners from before. In comes the new guy. And Daz shows us what's possible. And sets us on a great start for this season. The question is now, does he have what it takes to hold on to the very position he's just earned? And you might notice something about this screen that I might be noticing myself, which is, Jesus Christ, that's a lot of rain. Now, I'd say bring a raincoat, but unfortunately drivers aren't given that luxury, as they're forced to sit inside the car with horrible visibility. We'll be reading up in just 3 minutes' time, while the drivers have nothing to do but prepare maybe increase the downforce just a little bit. Now, if I was a driver in this situation, I'd be saying intermediate tyres. But of course, that all depends on how long they've been told the rain's going to last for. Drivers can make their own guesses over how that transition period's going to go, how early, whether or not they just want to abandon the wet tyres altogether. And here we go. No formation lap given. We're on the intermediate tyres at the front. And it's Daz taking us away for lap 1 of the Spanish Grand Prix. Full wet tyres, in fact. Never mind. Intermediates foregone. We have wet tyres. I repeat. Alert, alert. We have wet tyres. And who am I? Tried to go to the inside of turn 1. Didn't quite get it. We have some absolute scuffling going on in the back. Suzuki overtaken by Onions, please. Now into P3. Daz and who am I? Side by side through turn 3. The grip absolutely atrocious. Onions both going wide at the front. Who am I? Around the outside. Has more grip and makes that move. Daz now P2. And we're getting sliding all around the place. Dan Richards going wide turn 4. Onions trying to find his opportunity into turn 5. Around the outside, he's not given any space. The wheels lock. But Onions is on intermediates. We're going to look at the tyres now. Onions and Suzuki are on intermediate tyres. The rest are on wets, except for Eliminator, Noble Ford, Darrell, and Josh Owen. There's a bit of collision going on between Suzuki and Onions. As who am I? Simply pulls away. Already a second gap on Daz. But it's absolute chaos in every single slow corner here. And in these braking zones, nobody can control it. They've been told it's full wet conditions. But the question is for how long. Onions sliding in P12, in turn 12, sorry, P3. Not P12, luckily for him. You can see the struggling that the intermediate runners are having to do. Daz goes wide turn 14, misses the apex entirely. Onions gets a better run. And down the straight, the two cars, side by side. And an intermediate runner pulls ahead. Onions into turn 1. Gets the braking done more efficiently. And it's the McLaren of Onions that makes his way to P2. Daz, our pole sitter, now P3. And Suzuki on Daz now. You have to wonder, is there damage on that Alpine? While I check. There doesn't seem to be. There's always the chance that it's some lighter damage. But Daz is really struggling in the rain here. Magnus on the inside of the Alpine turn 5. Gets it stopped in time. No Max and Russell recap from 2025. But on the exit, the Aston Martin once again. Looks like he has a shot and the move is made. P5 now for Daz. As Suzuki, the other intermediate runner, pulls in to P3. Dan Richards and Ken Cheese going at it now. As we go almost 3 wide. Ken on the inside of the Ferrari into turn 10. The Sauber ahead is sliding. It doesn't make it any easier. And on the traction, we have a yellow flag. Rory sticks his nose up the inside once again, not giving away that position so easily. Turn 12. Shows the Alpine of Obese behind. Who am I gets fastest lap. Ken only just staying ahead of Obese mode. And it is absolute chaos. Josh Owen was the cause of our yellow flag. And there he goes, turn 12. Wing damage. And last place on the intermediates for the Sauber. As the front right end plate is definitely missing. Into the pits he comes. The internet not helping. And into the wall he goes on the way into the pit lane. He'll absolutely hate that I caught that. But we have a virtual safety car. As a result, the front wing on the pit lane has to be cleared up. And that is what happens. It was inevitable with the conditions. And the VSC It's finally ending. You can see everybody trying to manage their delta. We will be in storm conditions for the foreseeable future. And we get so many drive-throughs. That's 5. Suzuki, Daz, Ben-Avi, Tommy, and Forfeit all receiving drive-through penalties for speeding under that virtual safety car. Eliminator and Daryl side by side through turn 12. Not an area you usually see cars going side by side through. And the sliding is constant. A Haas goes through in turn 13. But it's Daryl managing that corner more effectively, hits the apex, and it's very clear what kind of exit that gave him. No DRS needed to make a move down this straight. And Daryl, the V-Carb, falling back into P13 where he was just a minute ago. And who am I? On the wet tyres, finds himself 3 seconds ahead. As battles continue to rage on. It's all about safety here. Damage will kill you. And your race, as we saw from Josh Owen, who's now retired. Bit of a scuffle up here with Rory being overtaken by Noble 4. The intermediates, I believe, finally coming into their own. Actually, no, Rory, I believe, has actually disconnected. Who am I? Sets another fastest lap. Suzuki into the pit lane. The question is why? Were the intermediates not good enough? Because Daz is also in the pit lane. It'll be interesting to see if he gets himself a brand new wing. Oh, never mind. These are the drive-through penalties. They're serving their drive-through penalties now. Which will put them towards the back. Dan Richards, very close, but of course dirty air combined with the rain doesn't do the cars any favors. Ben-Avi and Jack go at it in turn 10. Ben goes deep, Jack on the inside. The traction so difficult to find, it stays as is there. It's all about exit from turn 14. If you want to make a move into turn 1 with no DRS, it's all about pure traction and the speed you can carry. Ken makes a bit of a mistake in turn 1, goes deep, sacrifices his line for turn 2, and here comes Obese round the outside of turn 3. It looks very easy. I promise you it's not. As 3 wide. 3 wide we go with the V-Carb on the inside. Daryl Slater sees his teammate Noble 4 go through on Ken Cheese. Dan Richards pulls ever closer to Bunny. And Daryl and Ken Cheese side by side now locking wheels into turn 8. Daryl pulling back ahead. That fight never ending. Dan Richards tries to go for a better exit there. Doesn't quite get it. Goes to the inside, breaks late. But so does the Mercedes. The Mercedes goes deep. Bunny so wide in turn 11. And ultimately falls behind. Who am I with another fastest lap Absolutely flying in the rain. Obese through on Noble 4. And here we go. Bunny into the pit lane. Is there damage there? As we have quite a few drivers now coming into the pits, Rory and Ben Harvey included. But it's still so hard to make moves stick in the rain, where any mistake can cost you it. Dan Richards. Now, of course, ahead of Bunny, who came into the pits for some intermediate tyres. Even in storm conditions, there is a dry line. We're seeing the intermediates become the preferred tyre that Ben, Tommy, and Jack, and Rory have all gone to. But the runners of the wets, up in the front, have not given up on them yet. And sliding still. We're at lap 8. And Obese's tyres are simply going on him in turn 3. That turn is flat out in the dry on slick tyres, but it obviously is not here. And it's so hard for drivers to find out where that limit of grip is. Tommy gets the first 3-second penalty of the race, which in the wets is actually quite an accomplishment that nobody else had got any yet. But the grip simply doesn't exist. Who am I? Another fastest lap. Running away from the pack. As we have a little bit of a 4-car train going on. F1 Mad comes into the pits for those intermediates, having seen the dry line. But Dan Richards stays as is for now. The question is, when are these wet tyre runners going to come off them? Because they might be losing time as we speak to those who've gone to the intermediates. F1 Mad is one of them. We'll keep an eye on his grip, actually, to compare it. But we're still in storm conditions, so it will probably look very difficult regardless. We have Eliminator struggling just a little bit there. I think went off the track. The Haas finding it incredibly difficult to get around. And so Beast Mode grows so close. And into the pits. Oh, and into the barrier. Goes Beast Mode, loses the tyre, and that's a safety car. I've done that myself. I know how it feels. And that's not what you'd want to see. And we get a drive-through for Ben, speeding under safety car. And who am I? Gained himself a lead before the safety car, but now is going to lose it. And the car's close back in. So now we wait. As everybody, I believe, comes into the intermediate tyres, although it's storm conditions, the dry line exists. We're seeing almost everybody come on to intermediates. And now, who am I? Our front leader. Going to intermediates himself. He had 9 seconds of lead, but now, when the safety car comes back in, he'll be vulnerable to the McLaren. We're seeing the same from almost everybody who's on old intermediates, as they'd still prefer to have new ones. Of course, everybody has to be careful into the pit lane, as that's how we got this safety car. We had a crash on the inside of the pit wall that took off a wheel. So, new intermediates for the lot. A 3-second penalty for Daryl, I believe, unless it's a drive-through. A 3-second penalty for Daryl, drive-through for Ben Harvey, and a 3-second for Tommy. We can ignore looking at the tyres now. But we will look at position change because, oh my goodness. Noble 4 up 13 places. Daryl up 12. Daz down 11 from our pole sitter to P12. Who am I up to? Onion's up 2. Magnus up 4. Almost nobody, literally nobody, has stayed where they were this race. The rain always shuffles things around, and that's what we're seeing. And you can see the desperate weaving down the straights. As getting temperature into these tyres is not an easy feat, especially in the rain. So, we get a slight lull in the action while we wait for everybody to reach their place in this safety car queue. We have 17 cars still on the track, so it can take a bit of time. But at least we no longer have to worry about our front runner being 9 seconds ahead. as we've almost got everybody into the queue. Everybody's on the same tyre now, so we're in the same boat. Okay, the safety car is coming in this lap. As here we go. Who Am I becomes our safety car for around the final third of this lap. Going left and right. It's up to him when we return to race speed anytime from now, because the safety car's back in the pit lane. And he's still weaving. And it's only now that he's gotten to full speed. And down the straight. Has he got the jump on the McLaren behind? I don't think he has. He's still 2/10 behind. He can't shake him. What can Onions do? He pulls to the outside. Who Am I defending the inside? Brakes later. They're still side by side through turn 2. The curb very slippery in these conditions, and Onions takes the race lead off the start. Magnus Howell right behind him as well. We see the car's rear sliding out in turn 3 as everybody gets through the ghosted car. And Onions now, our new race leader, finding it quite easy to get himself up the road. But of course, isn't going to do so without being in the sights of Who Am I? But Who Am I sticks behind for now. We have some fighting going on at the back. Rory, never mind, it's the ghosted car. You can see every car simply continues to slide. The Haas there goes off. Eliminator struggling to keep it within the track limits. But he's not the only one. Noble 4. Rounding out this small queue of 3, Dan Richards, Darrell, Noble 4 finding themselves in a 3-way fight for P4. Who Am I sets the fastest lap to close in on Onions just a bit. And Darrell is very much closing in on Dan Richards. Has the touch straight line speed, but brakes just a little bit too early and gives away turn 1 to Dan Richards. Goes for a switchback into turn 3. Counting on Dan Richards going wide, but he doesn't. Forcing the V-Carb to stay P5. Through turn 4, the exit's better for Darrell, but he's forced to the outside of turn 5. Dan Richards significantly ahead, but not anymore. On the exit of turn 5, absolutely beautiful from Daryl Slater, takes the position into turn 7, and is now, having gained 15 positions, is 1 place off of a podium finish. Dan Richards and Noble 4 now go side by side. Through turn 10, Noble 4 slides the rear, leaving him altogether. That compromises the move, so he's forced to wait. And that's another slide as well. Suzuki in P7, really struggling to keep it in a straight line. And fastest laps come every lap now as the track isn't drying up in the sky, but the dry line gets drier. The front two have only grown closer over the past few laps. And who am I? Not quite giving up on the race win he'd fought for in the first stint. It's just not going to be as easy as he had hoped. Noble 4 all over the back. The Sauber of Dan Richards. Dan Richards goes a little bit wide there, giving Noble 4 a chance, but again, too eager on throttle, simply slides just a little bit. Turn 13, Onions takes the new fastest lap. Noble goes wide, and again compromises his exit from turn 14. Burns his battery down the straight, but Dan Richards did the same, and it's well defended. Daryl doesn't make the move on Magnus yet either. So we have fights going on for every position in the top 3. Dan Richards and Noble 4 side by side. Noble 4 through on Dan Richards out of turn 5. The V-Carbs, up 13 and 15 places respectively, have done one of the best constructor comebacks I've seen in a long time. There's Suzuki glued to the back of Dan Richards. Dan Richards slides out in turn 10, loses control under braking. Through goes the Williams. Dan Richards falls from P6 to 7. Who am I setting the new fastest lap? Trading between the front two. Daryl, still so close to the Aston Martin. You can almost see that rear wing. You can almost read the sponsorship, but no. Close, but no cigar for Daryl. Stays close through sector 2. Out of turn 5, that's a massive slide from Magnus. Opens the door. It'll all depend on Daryl now. The exit of turn 9. Don't go wide. Don't be too safe. Get it just right. Through turn 10, it's less than 3/10. Another massive set of slides for Magnus. You can see that car not staying still. but it's not quite moving forward like it's supposed to either. It's wobbling to the side. Onions takes fastest lap back. As on the exit of turn 14, both of them have a slide. Daryl, as a result, not able to take advantage. Have a look at Daz though, our pole sitter. We fell to P12, now P10. Tries to go around the outside of Bunny into turn 1. The Alpine on Mercedes. He's left very little room. And into turn 2. He went off the track. But no harm, no foul for Daz. Careful though, because harm might come soon. Eliminator is in his mirrors. Daz won't want to give that position up as Magnus and Daryl go side by side into turn 7. The fight for P3 very well on. Daryl's up 15 positions already. What's one more? Through turn 9, he's on the curb and it does it. It's too much. The curb cannot be handled in these conditions. He falls behind again, but he's got Noble 4 behind him, his own teammate. Will team orders come through, or will we simply be fighting? Daryl not giving up on overtaking Magnus quite yet. Onions has gapped UMI by just a little bit. And Daz is half a second behind Bunny. These are the closest fights on the grid right now. Magnus continues to slide. You have to care for these tyres. If he slides too much, he'll simply overheat them when the dry line gets too dry. And in 5 to 10 minutes time, it'll move from storm conditions to light rain. Which is when we'll really see the effects of tyre overheating. Even wet tyres can overheat on the dry line. You'll find drivers coming off the dry line to get some more water on them, in fact, to cool them down. Incessant sliding from every single one of these Formula 1 cars. The torque is so hard to manage. But Magnus hasn't done himself any favours by continuing to slide. Daryl is primed and ready. Slides on that curb every single lap. And it hasn't been enough, it seems. Indeed it hasn't. He burned all the battery. That was it for him. Nothing left in that push. And he'll go back to recharging for the next attempt. Through turn 3, Daryl gets a much better line. As far inside as you can go. It's fastest here. Magnus holds the inside of turn 4, goes a little bit wide. Daryl doesn't quite get the rotation, but has the exit speed. And into turn 5, he's on the outside. The V-carb on the Aston Martin once again. It's less than a tenth between the two. They lock wheels. And on the exit, Daryl once again side by side. The front wheel to front wheel to rear wheel now. It continues to change. Daryl spins. They lock wheels, and that's not what Daryl would have wanted. Such a close part of the track. Dan Richards pulls ahead. For how long is a better question. As now they fight. Daryl going from one failed fight to the next close one. And he's ahead. Daryl recovers to P6. And Noble 4 ahead of Suzuki. And now ahead of his own teammate. Has gained 14 positions. So Magnus has collided with one V-carb. And now he has to contend with the other. We'll be moving to light rain in the next 5 minutes or so. While that fight rages on, Daz is desperately trying to recover some of the points that he lost in the opening stages of this race. Very late braking, makes a collision with the Mercedes, but it's only light. It's very, very close. It looked very scary from the onboard. You can hear the engine sputtering with traction control. This Noble 4 now is the one threatening Magnus. At one point, he's going to have to worry about the V-carbs. And into turn 10, the Aston slides, absolutely throwing in the steering wheel. Onion sets our new fastest lap, 1.4 seconds between him and P2. Magnus and Noble 4. Within half a second. Less than half a second, 3/10 still. And Daz started from pole, now P10. The rain, so difficult. Now moving to light rain instead of storm. Noble 4 has been behind the V-Carb. I've been behind the Aston for so long. But into turn 2, the Aston has a slide. And on the exit, it's close. Noble 4 has his chance now. A switch back in turn 3. The long right-hander, they lock wheels. And Magnus tries to hold it on the outside. Flicks to the inside. Noble still on his inside through turn 4. And into turn 5, it's the later braker that takes it. Noble 4 then hanging on to it, but no, it's not quite there. Magnus on the inside leaves very little space once again, and it's still side by side. Through goes Suzuki, the Williams, into turn 9. He tries to take the inside on both cars, but he doesn't quite get it. Now 3/10 again, still. But it's become a three-way fight with Suzuki now in the mix. The car's very equally spaced. Daz still fighting to try and recover. Again, you can see the rear of that Aston Martin not staying put. But again, no car can stay put. But again, the main straight with no DRS is so difficult to navigate. Suzuki, hang on though, with higher top speed down the straight somehow, must have just been a better exit. Through on Noble 4, it's now no longer V-Carb on Aston Martin. It's Williams that's making the charge. Suzuki. As finally Daz makes a move on Bunny into turn 1. And the driver that started P1 gets a consolation prize of just one more point. But 3 wide, apparently, goes this fight once again. Suzuki now on the back of Magnus. It only took 1 lap to go from a second behind to less than half. But it's always this final straight, a massive slide for Magnus. Goes hugely wide. And into turn 1, stays where he is. Turn 5. This whole fight is simply just waiting to explode, and Magnus loses it there. Suzuki goes through and into turn 7. Finally, Magnus loses the position he's defended for so long. It becomes a 4-car fight now, with Darrell having recovered. He was in the same position as Suzuki just a few laps ago, and now here we are, Darrell on Noble 4, the teammates going side by side into turn 10, sorry. And it's Darrell ahead of Noble. 2 V-Carbs fighting, Suzuki making his way to the podium. So Suzuki now P3, the 2 frontrunners still 1.5 seconds apart. With 4 laps to go, after a safety car threw Who Am I off of his high horse, his 9-second lead, it's Suzuki. The qualified P2 has had a recovery drive to P3, and Magnus cannot quite catch up with the Williams that's just gone past him. Now it's up to the V-Carbs. They've been fighting Magnus all race. And it's about who is going to break first. Magnus's tyres have been struggling the whole time. And they're only just now reaching the worst part. And Onions takes the fastest lap. Daz, though, P10 gets a 3-second penalty. P9 now. Two and a half tenths. But again, no DRS makes it so much more difficult in the rain. And with a teammate behind, the pressure exists and it never goes away. Noble 4 won't be happy about losing P5. Magnus has done a great job of defending up until now, I have to admit. With these tyres that simply look like they're screaming at him. He's had so many slides, so many close calls. But miraculously has held on to P4. It's all about this exit. The way you take turn 14 determines if you have a good run down the straight, and here, Daryl and Noble don't quite have it. But there's another fight going on as we stay in light rain, so intermediates are going to stay on. We're not going to have any soft runners at the end. But it's Eliminator and Bunny for P10. You can hear the sputtering engine. No traction, no grip. How can you get power down? Well, that's the question every single driver right now is going to be asking, and that's a slide from Daryl. As I was saying, how do you get power down? Well, the answer's not that. If you get too eager, you'll lose it. Daryl, much better traction through turn 11. Gets a much nicer rotation in turn 12. Magnus with another slide, hits the V-carb. It's a huge crash. Daryl is massively slowed by that. His teammate goes through, taking both positions. Through goes Noble 4 into P4. Daryl now P5 and Magnus P6. Was there any damage that came out of that? You have to wonder. But I think we just about got away with it. It wasn't a very fast crash, just a very difficult one. And ultimately, it's Noble 4 that wins out that three-man battle. And with one lap to go, Onions coming through Sector 3 for the penultimate time. For anybody who was upset about the championship result today, this will not bring you any comfort. The McLaren in the lead, bringing us on to our final lap. Coming off the dry line to try and cool down those intermediate tyres. And the Red Bull behind him, ever so close. And Daryl takes our fastest lap of the race. A 24.769. Everybody going wide at this point. So hard to hold on to grip. Who am I? Making a final push. Gained 7/10 that sector. 1.4 to 0.7. To 0.8. But is it too little too late? As Dan Richards finds himself making a move on Magnus. The Aston Martin struggling too much at this point. As Onions, with 5/10 between him and P2, comes across the line. It's a McLaren of Onions that wins the first race of the season, but with a penalty, he loses it. Onions had a 10-second penalty we didn't see, and didn't serve it. And Who Am I, as a result, inherits the win. So for those who are upset about the championship result, You'll actually quite enjoy this one. The McLaren receives a 10-second penalty. And Who Am I takes the first win of the season. Onions P2, Suzuki P3, and our pole sitter, Daz, in P9, coming across the line now. The Alpine, an unfortunate race, but there's always more to see over the course of a championship. So it's Noble 4 P4, Daryl P5, Dan Richards P6, Ken P7, Bunny P9, forfeit 10th. And the following drivers either DNF'd or didn't quite make it to those points positions. A constantly rainy race in Spain. Definitely threw some spanners into the works. And that's it for the season opener of Vortex F1 Racing League. As we take a look at our podium and our drivers of the day. It was Who Am I that took our race win. Daryl taking fastest lap driver of the day and most overtakes, with Noble 4 taking cleanest driver. An insane performance from the V-Carbs, going from 18th and 19th to 4th and 5th while taking fastest lap. But our finishing order: Who Am I, Onions, Suzuki, Noble 4, Daryl, Dan Richards, Ken, Daz, Bunny, forfeit, Liminator, Jack, Ben, Magnus, Rory, who disconnected, and the final two did not quite finish. But a beautiful race regardless. Thanks for coming. We'll see you in Wednesday for our realistic performance segment, and next Sunday for this continuation. See you then.